Welcome to the final episode of our Slayers series, everyone. We'll be getting to the phenomenal discussion with Spencer Campbell shortly, but we have a very special call to action coming up at the end of the episode, so you might want to take a listen to the sorts of things we'll be covering.
After the show, you can join us for a very important announcement about our upcoming 5th year anniversary celebration starting in April.
Ooh.
So part of this celebration will be a Patreon drive, and we will have some really interesting incentives if you sign up during this time. You definitely 100% do not want to miss what sorts of things we'll be offering. We'll also be going over it in our newsletter, so there'll be info on how to sign up for that as well. Also, there's the usual patron thank yous, as well as a brand new review. It's a lot to do.
Ooh, lots to do. It is a packed call to action today, but it is going to be full of excitement because we are both very excited for all of this. Until then, enjoy the rest of this series, everybody.
Welcome back to our discussion episode. Last time, we finished our session 0 for Slayers. This episode, we will be discussing the character creation process. We are excited to welcome back Spencer Campbell. Do you want to reintroduce yourself to everyone at home? And please tell us about the character you made in our last episode.
Sure. So I'm Spencer Campbell. You might know me under the name Gila RPGs. I'm on Twitter. I publish under all that sort of stuff. I'm excited to be back here talking about some more Slayers. The character that I made a tactician from the bunch last time. My character's name, surprise, surprise, is Rasp, the name I use on literally every character everywhere all the time. Rasp is a tactician, like I said. They are kind of on the younger side, scrappier side. They aren't like that grizzled old veteran who knows how to conduct a good fight in a clean way. I think Rasp mostly knows how to conduct fights in dirty fighting. And so that's why my skills kind of reflect that, in that I have high points in tactics because I'm a tactician, but also in streets and stealth, meaning I think Rasp has largely figured out how to fight by watching other people fight, and has decided to take some of that observational learning and bring it to fellow Slayers to be like, this is how we could fight. If we wanted to fight a little dirty, here's how we can do it. And then I think that's why one of the advances I took from my character is the weaken one, where I can actually do a lot of things that make enemy rolls worse. Rather than making you all better, I just make the enemies worse. And I think that's a lot of me throwing pocket sand, a lot of me distracting enemies by doing not so clean fighting, rather than giving you all the pat on the back to boost your skills.
I mean, unlike me, who just does damage to our team. You damage the enemies instead of helping, and I just also damage our friends.
It's just damage up and down all day.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Ryan, do you want to tell everybody about your character?
All right. So I compromised with an AU version of Lena Inverse, for those familiar with the Slayers anime series, which I thought was very fitting for a game of the same name. And I created the Blade, somebody that is just going to wreck single opponents every round. Lena has, she is a fiery redhead who wears a dramatic outfit with a cape. Of course.
I can't believe anybody would even try to imagine this character without a cape.
I know, right?
It was ridiculous. You're wrong, everyone listening. You're wrong.
Straight up wrong.
And I would say that her sword is thin and elegant and really good in an agile hand, because she is her best skill is agile with a 10, and then an 8 in hunt and study. So I kind of think she likes the thrill of the hunt. She likes studying and learning about the things that she's going to fight, and she's really good at it. So that's kind of like where I'm going with that. And she likes also to help her companions up on the front lines with her be able to defend themselves better with one of the advancements that she took, the Defender advancement. And of course, since she's up there with Amelia's character, which we'll find out about in a second, I also took the Hardy advancement so I can just take all more of that corrupted damage every single round. So might as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Amelia, tell us about your character.
My character's name is Clemency, Clem for short. I picked the Arcanist character type. In my style, I wrote vaguely unsettling because the Arcanist is someone whose power is also slowly destroying them. Love corruption, big fan of corruption. So one of the spells I took was Corrupting Wave, which lets me just release a wave of corruption to everyone around me, including my friends. So I did enhance that one so that my allies will only take 1 damage instead of the amount of damage that I am doing to everyone else. You're welcome.
Very generous of you.
I know. I love that we have like the tactician moving everything around. We have this blade that's very good at like one-on-one precise agility, and I'm like, just blow it all up, man. Just
what if we all
destroy
felt pain?
Everything, right? Right? Look, if everyone's dead, the monsters are in fact also dead.
The job is done.
So, I'm going to need you to be a little more clear on the instructions next time. I also have Fear Cloud, which lets me plant the worst fears into the minds of my enemies. I have Mend because, I don't know, like I guess I probably should help out some people somehow, especially if I'm the one hurting them. Maybe I should also be able to fix them. And then I also have Siphon because I'm a real creep, which lets me drain the life force directly from my foes and make it my own. And then, like I said, I did take an advance to help me not hurt Ryan as much. And then I also took Boon, which lets me boost a spell with a D8 instead of a D6. So I can be a little more likely to hit if I decide to boost my spells.
Nice.
Yeah. I guess I should say that I increased my my deceive skill up to a D10 and then put mend and what was the other one? Mend and negotiate up to an 8. So
awesome.
Yeah.
Oh, I love this group.
Both of you being wonderfully careful and me just bull in a china shop.
Uh-huh.
Yep.
Absolutely. Well, let's go ahead and dive right into a segment that we're calling D20 for your thoughts.
D20 for your thoughts?
So in this segment, we talk to our guests about their thoughts on this character creation process, how it relates to the system, how it relates to other games. We just had you on not that long ago. I think it was July. So we can't ask you our standard question anymore. So we came up with a different one. Where do you tend to find your inspiration for your hundreds of projects that you have going at any given moment? Do you like how that was a question and also a call out at the same time?
Yeah, I feel very seen
it's very
right now.
passive aggressive.
What's wrong with you? Why can't you stop?
Ryan, can we put that question in our outline now for people? Like, we always have that question of like, how did you end up here? Is sort of our like standard. How did you get into role playing game books? And so many people are like, oh, how did it come to this?
Just turn it into, are you okay? Are you okay?
Hey, buddy, how you doing?
I got a lot of spinning plates at all times. It wasn't always like this, but it has kind of rapidly accelerated in the last year or two, where I've just kind of really leaned into this design thing because it has been I never really did a lot of it, and then I kind of dipped my toes into it, and then I became obsessed with it. And like many things I do, I just go all in once I'm into this. As anybody, if you could see my desk, it's covered in hundreds of Netrunner cards because Logan Dean was like, "Hey, do you want to play Netrunner?" And I said, "Sure." And now I have way too many Netrunner cards. So
it's a slippery slope.
It's dangerous.
Yeah.
So I guess in terms of inspiration for my games, I mean, it's no surprise or secret that video games are obviously a big inspiration for a lot of stuff that I do. So, the Lumen system that I created was specifically designed to recreate that kind of power fantasy looter shooter genre that I find particularly fun, or even just kind of like action games. So like Diablo is even sort of something that I would consider something that feels very Lumen-like, where your character is especially good at like 4 things and you get to keep pushing the button that says, I'm doing something spectacular and cool all the time.
Yeah.
And I like that feeling. And I'm not particularly as an RPG player or designer into like heavy simulation of reality because I have to live in reality and I would like to live somewhere else when I play a game.
I already do that every day.
Right. As our discussion talked about earlier, I don't really want to test my ability to climb a wall every couple feet to see if I'm still climbing
Roll for lactic acid.
Right. I just want to climb the wall, please. So for me, I look to games that allow you that sense of just feeling good and cool and being spectacular. And so video games are kind of a natural escape for me and many people to do that very thing. And for me, I have always wanted to bring some of that element back to the table because I think video games are by and large understood by a much larger audience. And I can convince people to try an RPG if I can say, if you like this thing, or if you're into this kind of play, if this makes you excited, I've got something that I think you could try that you would be able to understand pretty quickly, learn pretty quickly, and dive into it. So for me, it's taking that kind of like high octane, but also usually highly accessible access of that video games give us and bringing that into a tabletop game where it is, you can learn the game really quickly. You've made a character really quickly and your character could be exceptionally good at a couple of things, and every time you do them, you feel very good while you're doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So that's pretty much it. If I or the other answer is crows. Crows are my other biggest form of inspiration. Where I just really like crows, and so most of my games have something that is crow related in it. Usually, an enemy, or in Corporate Court, you just are crows doing crime.
Right.
Because I like crime and crows, and sometimes these things need to be put together.
Yeah. I mean, I think everybody has their thing, you know? I mean, Ryan and I certainly do. And you're just like, okay, but what if this game, but then my thing? Like,
right?
You know, like how can we make every character a magical girl or a necromancer or, you know?
And I think every game is better for that.
I like what I like and I know who I am and what I'm about, okay? Like, let me make my thing.
Right. Yep. So when I make games, I go like, I know what I like to do. I know what I like to do when I'm playing games. I'm going to make things that cover that. And then if you want to do other things, you can figure it out at your table. This is what I enjoy doing. And so my games, I think very clearly are representations of what Spencer Campbell enjoys doing when he's at the table playing a game.
Yeah, which I think we need that in creative spaces. And I think that's something that it certainly for us millennials has not necessarily been a thing that we can really pursue, is just doing something because it's fun for you and it's silly and it makes you happy. That not everything needs to be something that everyone else will love. And sometimes it is. That's really cool. Sometimes you make something and other people are like, yeah, that's awesome. I love it. But it doesn't have to be. And sometimes all the inspiration you need is just to be like, I think it's cool.
Right.
Like that's enough inspiration. That's great. Run with it. Be happy. Do your thing.
Absolutely. Other sources of inspiration, guesting on Character Creation Cast.
Yeah. Thanks a lot. Thanks. Now that I'm working on Nova Mars. I mean, that's actually a fair point. Is like truly, honestly, anytime I get to sit down and talk to somebody about these things, it inevitably plants a seed of wanting to do something else with that thing or creates a new idea. So, I mean, just talking with people is inspiration on its own. Design can be a very lonely thing if you're doing it by yourself, but even just like the earliest sharing of things and seeing that it just suddenly sparks a totally different way that you might see something is a huge point of inspiration. That's why I do a lot of my design live on Twitch. Is I do my design streams because I find talking out loud helps me to articulate my ideas, but then also on the off chance that there's anybody watching or hanging out in chat, sometimes I get people talking back and giving ideas or responding to thoughts that I put on the page. And immediately that starts getting the ball rolling maybe in a direction that I hadn't been thinking about. And so I really enjoy doing the public design like that because it's just it's a fun way to do sort of a collaborative process or even just a means of sparking inspiration in unexpected ways.
Yeah. I mean, I think we're finding that too with our stuff is that because we're putting it out and people are listening to our episodes, that occasionally we'll have people in our Discord that are like, oh, this made me think of this thing. And we're like, oh yeah, I didn't see it that way. Or, you know, in the opposite way, we've had a couple people say like, oh, this reminded me to kind of dust off that old project that I had started working on before. And so now I'm going to work on that now. And that always feels really good too. Is just be like, even if nothing comes from my thing, it's really cool that somebody else started now and is making something.
Absolutely.
So I love like collaborative design work, even if it's just bouncing ideas off of somebody else. Like it's so cool to just, because everybody thinks so differently. And we talked about that with, you know, the different character types that people are making for Slayers too. And just the way other people see the things that you've made or approach things from a totally different way. It's really cool to interact with that stuff and be like, I didn't even see that as an option. Like my brain didn't even know you could do that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, last time, Spencer, we asked you about character creation. This time, I would like to ask you about world building. We're big fans of collaborative world building during Session Zero. And you have created so many different settings. What do you enjoy most about building your own worlds? And what about the process draws you to it?
Wow. I mean, world building is super, super fun to me. It's a hard line to walk because like there's a part of me that just wants to go super deep when I make a world that like just make everything, like write it all out. And I think when I did, especially when I was an early GM, you know, GMing fantasy campaigns, I would have like whole worlds mapped out and would let, you know, see what the players do as they explore this world. And that was very fun for a while, but then we would start to change the way that we would play where we wouldn't have the map painted in, but we would have just a couple things and then the map would get painted together at the table. And I realized that was infinitely more fun to do. So world building is one of those things that I really, really enjoy, but I'm not necessarily always doing or representing a lot of it in the games themselves. I like to give you a sense of what the setting is, because I have extreme faith that tables will always come up with something better than I can come up with when it comes to a lot of this stuff, or something that is at least better suited to what they are all interested in. So that if I'm heavily prescriptive about what a setting is supposed to be, that might just completely turn you off from even wanting to engage with the game. But if I give you like a vague idea of what the setting is like and then say, there's a lot of unknowns out here and you get to kind of fill those in, that's fun for people. They get to do the world building, the thing that I'm having so much fun doing on my own. So, and that is both like a process that is very exciting to me, but it's also very hard for me to not like over design a world, because there is that part that just wants to like, oh, I've got pages and pages and pages of world that I want to share with you. And I'm reaching a stage now as a designer where I'm starting to want to introduce more of that stuff in other ways. So like in supplements that maybe provide like short flash fiction or, you know, little stories or supplements that give you, okay, if you enjoyed the core book and that gave you a vague idea and you made the world your own, but you want to know a little bit more and you want to know a little bit more about how Spencer sees it, here's some supplements that are going to give you like a little bit deeper dive. So like, in Nova, I have supplements planned for each of the enemy factions that will teach you a lot more about what they're like, at least from how I perceive them. And then you can go like, oh, this is how we perceive the Hellions, but here's this book, and here's another way that we could think about it. And as an optional supplement, I'm not telling you your Hellions have to behave this way in Nova. I'm saying, here's Spencer Campbell's interpretation of the world, and do with it what you will. So I'm finding that kind of sprinkling lore or world building in things that are not in the core book is probably the best way for me to do it, so that I still leave those holes at the table without having to say, this is the way the world works.
Yeah. I like games that have some of that kind of flexibility, the way this one does with the different districts and things, that like there are options. You've written things for this setting to say, like, here's some districts that there are, but there's nothing in there that's like, again, like I always reference this as a player of L5R, a game with like a ton of lore that I remember when I first sat down to play, the people that I was playing with being like, here's a stack of books to know the world. And me being like, no.
Yeah.
I mean, which obviously I got drawn in quickly and fell down a rabbit hole. But like, it's a barrier to entry for a lot of people. And we've talked a little bit about like that executive function and the way that affects games and picking new systems and things like that. When there is a lot of set lore to a game, that sometimes it can be overwhelming. And I like the sort of balance that you found in this and in Nova, where it's like, we've created some things for you to kind of give you the scaffolding and say, like, this is the kind of tone, the general vibe, like, how to make your own things. Do it that way you want. Use as much as you want, as little as you want. Here are the tools to do more if you want to. And I find that really helpful in a game, that it gives me some creative control, some narrative buy-in, but also it does provide me with some guardrails to say, like, to not sit down and, look at a blank sheet of paper and be like, create something. And I'm like, anything? Like, like my son comes home and he's like, we were told to write an essay. And I was like, about what? He goes, an essay. Just told to write an essay. And I was like, who does that to a child?
No.
That's
Just start
like,
writing.
no. Like, but I like having that flexibility. I am having a hard time doing it with our own game, being like, no, let's not answer those questions. Because my desire is to answer those questions. And so it's great as a player. It's really hard as a designer.
Because it's so much fun, right? You made this cool place. Like you've imagined a world in your head, and you want to share that world, and you want to live in that world, and you want people to live in that world with you. And yet at the same time, that if you do that, I mean, just go write a book then. If you really want to do that, go write the novel.
Yeah.
And,
I mean,
yeah.
Counterpoint, you get to do playtesting, and now you get to make 10 different versions of that world.
Yeah, that's true.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's going to be different every single time, because if you're playing with different people, there's going to be different ideas thrown in, and different interpretations and different perspectives, and that's the beauty of collaborative world building, where everybody pulls from their own experiences and puts it into this melting pot to create this like really intriguing place that you can insert your characters into. And every single person at that table has something about that setting that they've bought into because they created it.
Right. And we've talked about too how, like, in doing that at a table with your players, they've now handed you all of these different strings that you can pull on too. They said, like, this part of the world is important to me, and you as a GM are like, okay, we're going to come back to that.
You just put that in your pocket for later when you need something to hook that particular player in. You now have that thing.
Right.
I've talked about this with a few folks. Like, my origin story of play is playing with Chicago improvisers. Those are the first people I played with. So I can do all the world building I want, and it doesn't matter. They're going to do their thing, and they don't want a pre-written script. They want a yes and, absolutely, but they want a yes and a thing that we have done together, rather than me saying, here's your script, improv on top of that. And so I quickly learned the lesson of, okay, I can over world build, but it's gonna limit the way that the players can feel like they're buying in, or I can give them lots of holes, and they love to fill the holes.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, and that is something that's definitely going to depend on the group that you play with. Because I'm sure that there are some groups that are like, I want to show up, I want to sit down, and I want to play. Or, discover things on my own that I didn't make up myself. I can't imagine what it's like to be that kind of person, but I'm sure they're out there. They're out there. They're out there somewhere. They're not here. But yeah, I like having that little bit of balance of like, okay, you've kind of set me in a direction, but left me up to my own devices once I'm there. So we like to talk about the layout and things on character sheets. This is something that I did mention one thing while we were doing our character creation. Character sheets are the first impression most people have of a game. So what things did you kind of consider as you were doing this? I'm interested, especially in this game, because the character types are so asymmetrical that you couldn't just put the same thing on every sheet and like put a little different logo in the corner or something like that, What things were important? What did you feel like you needed? What things didn't you need? How did you make it all work? All of the questions, please.
Yeah, I mean, it's tricky. This is the riddle that Mike Riemann, who did the layout for Slayers, had to figure out, which is, each class has its own set of things that it does, which means they're all going to have a different amount of information that you're going to need. And like you said, the character sheet is the first impression, and it's also like 90% of the stuff that you're going to look at as a player is going to be that sheet. And then the 10% of the time you're looking up something quickly in the book and then going back to looking at your sheet. And so, you need to make sure that the sheet has what they need readily available. And when everybody has a different amount of information that they need readily available, it creates a little bit of a conundrum. Thankfully there is kind of that DNA that flows through Slayers of like every class has the ready, attack, and quick action. So we know we need to have that. Every class is going to have the skills, so we know they need to have that. A name and a style, the essence of who they are. And so knowing that is like, that's the guaranteed stuff. How much room is left over to figure out how much of the unique information we could put in, right? So the Bane table, for example, for the Arcanist, we mentioned that as it's nice to have that on the character sheet because you don't want to roll, see that you've triggered a Bane thing, and then realize you have to go look that up somewhere else. So like we had to figure out a way to make sure that was there on the sheet. But then that meant that there was less real estate on the sheet for other things. And part of that just comes from play and seeing what people wanted or needed on hand with a given class. And then other situations where we're seeing like, okay, they're flipping for this a lot. So how do we make sure that this is like obvious to them, or what, it was important for me to have for the gunslinger, the chamber with the numbered, to have the ammo, so that, because I had always imagined the actual gunslinger in real life is putting 6d6 in a circle. And so I wanted something on the character sheet so that you could actually put them there on those spots and you could feel like you're literally picking them up. And is that totally necessary to have on the sheet? No, but to me, that's an important vibe of what being the gunslinger is about. And so, space was given to putting that image there, even though you don't technically need to put it on those spaces. And so it was an interesting thing. And, Mike had to do some puzzle solving to figure out how to, what we did have space for and what we didn't have space for. And ultimately it kind of came down to just seeing what people flipped for the most in books and seeing what they needed, and also just what felt like, okay, we absolutely need to have some place to put this thing. Like for the Arcanist, for example, right? A bunch of spells, but there's not space on the character sheet to write out what all the rules are for all of your spells. And that's just an inevitability on which you're going to know 4 spells. They all have a bunch of different effects. And then you're going to learn more spells. And there's just not space on one sheet to have all of that. And so the more important stuff for us was list the spells that you know. Because you only know 4, you're probably going to get to know them pretty intimately, pretty quickly. Right. And so more so, we needed to make sure that you knew quickly offhand what your actions were, because those are the things that you're doing every single turn. It's an interesting thing thinking about character sheets and how you show enough information without it being also overwhelming where there's too much going on. And if it becomes busy, it becomes, because I generally think that Slayers is a pretty rules light game. And so you want a character sheet also that looks like it's an approachable game. You don't want something that looks like there's a lot going on here and I'm struggling to see what my character actually is. The goal is to make something that makes you go, I immediately get a sense of what I am all about, and I have the widgets and levers in front of me to pull when I need them.
Yeah, for me, it's like I'd like it to be clear what things are important, what things I'm going to use the most, like need to know, that it's easy to find the things that I need to find. So when you say, write this down on your character sheet, that is very clear to me where that's supposed to go. And, you know, like in the case of the Arcanist having that Bane table on there, not only does it mean not having to flip to the book, which it's fine if you have to do it every so often. You know, we talked about you kind of do for the spells still anyway.
Right.
But for me, it's a very visual reminder that there are consequences to my actions. Because like not only is there the corruption track that I'll fill up as I go, but the consequences of my actions are right there on the sheet in front of me. To remind me, not only are there consequences, here is what they are. And it makes them seem like, you know, from a psychological standpoint, it's like they're more real now because they're right there. Like I'm being told, if you do this, you know.
Right, you can't ignore
it. Whereas like, you know, there's a spot for me to write my known spells, and I can write those down and I'll have to reference what they do and everything. But like, obviously I know I'm a magic user. I know that my core mechanic is using spells. So I can like look those up. But the reminder that like, oh, also it's going to cause problems is also on that sheet. And that was important to me because that corruption is so important to what this character does.
Yeah, it's really interesting because all the sheets have that same basic like C-shaped layout of like, here's your like stats, basically. Here's your skills on the left side, and then here's your advances at the bottom. And then all that right middle bit in that empty space of the C, that's all your like really different, interesting stuff for each of the classes. But it all like looks familiar between the different sheets. So it's not like I'm going from a blade to an Arcanist, and now like the character sheet is completely different because they play completely different. You've got the asymmetry of how the class plays, but you've got the symmetry of how the sheets are presenting that class.
Yeah, which I think is really nice because like I can flip to either of your pages and know like, oh, okay, I know where your passive action is. I know where your like fun little weird things are hidden. Because it is, it's that same skeleton, and then just what's filled in the middle is a little bit different. It
also makes it easy for people who are making third-party stuff to make something as well, because if they know, like, okay, this is the guaranteed information, and now this is the zone that I need to fill. What is the unique way that I fill this zone? That way, you know, you're not making a character sheet from scratch, or if truly every class had a wildly different character sheet, that's one more hurdle in front of somebody trying to make something for the game, because character sheets are hard to make. And so if you have an idea for a class, but then you suddenly realize you have to like from scratch build a character sheet that is modular and works exactly for them and is different than the others, that's hard. And so it helps to be like, you just need to fill this part of the sheet. The rest of it, probably pretty similar to what everybody else is doing.
Yeah. And as a player, again, like I said, that importance to me of knowing where to find the thing that I need. And knowing that like if I play this game again and I play a different class, like, oh, okay, I can still find what I need to find, and I know where it is. Makes it so much easier. It eases the mental burden of doing that. Yeah.
Absolutely. So then how do we think character creation in Slayers stacks up to other systems that we've played? You know, it's quick.
It's quick. It's very snappy. It's very snappy.
I do like how, because of the symmetry of the sheets, I feel like I could go to any other class and fill it out just as quickly, because it's not too many decisions once you have your class.
filled out everybody's while we were going. I did everybody's sheets. So
and like you said, Spencer, picking the class, once we did that, you said, well, that's the hardest part of character creation. And I think you're right.
Yeah, especially because we had to argue.
We did have to argue over it. We did. But like, I can also see like going through and playing the same classes different ways, right? And having a group of arcanists or a group of blades or whatever, and then maybe a tactician on the back end, just like go my blade army, have fun.
Right. I was thinking that too, because it was like there's enough different skills that we could put, we could put those like advances in different places and have higher levels of agility or deception or, and still come out with very different characters, even though we only made a couple choices. That like if we all wanted to play Arcanists, we could.
Yeah, absolutely.
Really do some corruptive damage.
Just waves and waves of corruption going off.
Of corruption.
Yeah. Which also makes me think of like, how can you break the game min-max wise, like with your group setup? Like, what if you had 2 tacticians and 2 blades and an arcanist? And it's like, now you're getting into the Final Fantasy 1 problem of like, what's the most efficient 4-class combo I can get to destroy this game? And that tickles a really like nostalgic portion of my brain.
I don't feel like that analogy works though, because that game has already been written, and no matter how many times you play it, you're going to come up against the same challenges, which is the beauty of a role-playing game, is that I can play it an infinite number of times and my GM can just make different problems.
That's fair.
Right?
That's
so
fair.
there is no optimal, like this is a thing, this is a philosophical thing that we need to, as a hobby, as an industry, understand that there is no optimal way to play anything, because we are not on a like straight A, B, or C trajectory. Somebody else can be like, F. I pick option F.
Yeah.
And like, now you've ruined the whole thing.
Yeah.
And I the asymmetry of this really just like, it makes me happy, because you can't like optimize a single class and be like, there is no correct, exact, perfect option.
Right.
And I love that. It makes me happy. It makes me happy that there is a game that's not like, look, if you're going to do this, you're going to pick the fighter because that does the most damage, and you're going to, no, just no.
Just a table of 10 players, 5 blades,
5 tacticians. Each paired with the other. And you never miss your combo.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that would be fun, because it would be fun to like play out a story where it's like you have an assigned tactician. You're like, I'm an excellent swordsman, but a terrible decision maker.
Yeah.
And like, and so you need to have like, this is my parent/guardian behind me making the decisions. This is my designated adult. And
it's like Pokemon. Then you're playing the Pokemon, and then the tacticians are the trainers.
Is that what it's like?
This is, I mean, it's kind of related, but this idea of having like a set pair of classes reminds me of a third-party class that Josh Hiddie created that is heavily inspired by the Locked Tomb. So you've got your Necromancer Cavalier sort of pairing going on. And it is like 2 classes that are intentionally designed to be like, if someone's playing one of these classes, somebody should play the other class, because they
just deeply codependent.
Yeah, and it's very, very good if you're into the Locked Tomb trilogy.
Oh,
amazing!
I'm gonna have to go look that up.
There's too many good third party things out there. There's too many.
I know.
That's why I say choosing class is the hardest part, because there's the 4 in the book, but then there's a million others to choose, and it's very hard for me to choose.
Yeah. And I like having that plethora of options. And I like, with a lot of third-party stuff, the specificity of some of it. The number of people that are like, oh, I'm going to make that for my exact niche. And it may not make anybody else happy. It may not make sense to anybody else, but it is exactly what I want. And I love that people are able to do that people are doing that. That like somebody out there is like, this is my favorite, very obscure sci-fi book series, and I would like to make a character type based on this, you know?
If I had the time, I'd be making magical girl classes for every game.
I know you would. I know. We'll just make a whole game of it.
I know, right?
How do you feel like the process of making characters in this game kind of sets players up or reinforces the feel of what this game is going to be like?
There's a couple of things that come to mind. One is, I think we had these moments when we were doing character creation where we realized the potential of how we can ping off of one another with some of our things. And that's just a big way that I think about combat in games, generally speaking, is that, as was discussed earlier, like if we're all doing the same thing, we don't care what the other person is doing in combat, but in the character creation element, we are already starting to think about ways that here's what I'm really good at, and here's also a way that you can help reinforce what I'm really good at, or how I can reinforce what you're really good at. And by just having a couple of those advances at the beginning, it's immediately giving you that sensation of like, oh, here's how we're going to work together as a team. And so that's one of the things that I really like. And then, we didn't end up going down the path where you both chose Arcanist, but as we've discussed, like there's enough there that if two people decide to choose the same class, between the variety of different things that you're choosing, like your skill dice and then the advances and everything like that, that your classes can deviate. There's a lot of permutations and directions that can go, much like the Infinite City that can go in many different directions. There's a lot of different ways that a blade can manifest or an Arcanist can manifest.
Yeah.
Without it being overwhelming.
Exactly. No, I sincerely love the ability for classes to be able to play off of each other. And I think when we talked about Nova, it was one of the first times I think where it really clicked for me what I wanted in combat in a game, because I don't like combat in games. And in that one, you're like, well, it's like a puzzle. Like we are problem solving and kind of linking pieces. And it was like this light bulb moment for me of that's what I want. I want it to not be the one time in a game where we are not working together. Right. Like the one time where there are specific turns, and that has always bothered me. And so having the asymmetrical classes, but the way that they key off of each other and build on each other and work together, really, it makes me interested in combat in a way that I almost never ever am in a game, because it like suddenly ruins everything that I like about role-playing games when it's like, okay, it's my turn and I hit it, and the thing I do like maybe made the number go down one when it's your turn, but like it didn't do anything for you, really. You're still interacting with this thing on your own. And there are like, you can buff and boost and heal and but like the number of times we really do that is not that much. Right. And so I just really, I like when things go together. I like when everyone works together and is friends. Or not friends. I like when we all don't work together and are not friends too. But only on purpose.
Yeah. Well, because it avoids a lot of the like, I only care about what I'm doing on my turn. Right. And every other turn, I'm spaced out. Right. Like just waiting for 5 minutes to get around the table and to be like, well, who's left standing?
Yeah. And you're like, look up from your phone, like what? Right. What do we do? Where's how many HP left? What do we have to do? Okay. Or
the cleric that are throwing their spell slots at damage spells when they should be healing. That sort of thing. Like, the barbarians at 1 HP, I'm gonna smite it again. It's fine.
Yeah, I like that it keeps me interested in what you're doing because it's different than what I can do. I like that, what you're doing potentially can change what I do on my turn. And like, so I want to watch what you're doing and see, like, is this going to help me? Is it going to hurt me?
Yeah.
Like you're watching me to be like, okay, am I about to lose some HP here because she's,
There's
ruining
gonna be
everything?
An explosion.
Like, right. And so I think that makes it way more interesting for me as a player.
Yeah, absolutely. So What do you think then, Spencer, is one of the biggest flaws of character creation in this system? And also, what is one of your favorite parts?
I think there's a pretty big obvious. There's like a pretty big obvious flaw to me, and it's something that I addressed in another Slayer's product later. In that all the character creation stuff is largely, and because the game is largely focused on combat, is about combat stuff. So it is about how does your monster hunter fight monsters, and in a setting where there's this kind of infinite city and all these different districts, which has an implication that there's all these different factions and, you know, different cultural backgrounds that your character be coming from, that stuff is largely not addressed in character creation. And then on top of that, your character largely doesn't have a lot of things that they do when they're not in combat, right? Like we kind of just rely on the skills that do the things, and then all the really fun buttons that you get to push are buttons that you push during combat. And so there is kind of there's a lack of support in the character creation and just kind of generally of like, what interesting things do we get to do when we're not in combat? Because you're not constantly fighting monsters. So I made a game called Drifters, which is a Slayer's hack that is in a Weird West setting, and all the characters are different guns, weird cursed Voidborn guns. But there is a second part to your character creation that is your background, who you were before you picked up your Void gun, and it changed you. And you have powers that feel cool that you get to do that are in the non-combat side of things, how you interact and explore and investigate the world, and that two-part character where you get to reinforce the stuff that you're doing when you're outside of combat is something that's just it's simply missing in Slayers, and that's because when I designed it, I was designing it as a monster hunting game, and so it does the monster hunting really good, and the character creation clearly reinforces that. It doesn't reinforce as much mechanically the non-monster hunting stuff. And that's just because to me, and as we've kind of discussed here, that's the part of role-playing that can oftentimes be like the wheels, like we suddenly just kind of break in terms of the pacing of the session or the fun or the buy-in can suddenly change a lot if combat feels like a drag. And so I want to me, I got to make that part the fun part. And because I have largely faith that you will be able to make the not combat stuff fun on your own. And for some people, that's cool. And for other people, they like to have a little bit more that they can chew on mechanically outside of combat. And I totally understand that. And that's just not the stuff that's in the Slayer's character creation stuff.
Yeah. I think there's enough D&D APs out there that we're pretty well aware that you can like tell a story even when a game doesn't give you any help telling a story.
Right. And that's why
we've learned that lesson. That's why there's the whole like failure with weight thing, right? Because to me, like we're not picking up the dice a lot when we're not in combat unless we really feel like we need to. But we can mostly rely on our ability to talk to each other and tell a story together to handle the stuff that's outside of combat. But again, I know people who are like, I wish I had a faction mechanic where I interacted with a certain thing, or a bonds mechanic that we see in like PBTA games, and like I get that, it's just not it's not what Slayers is all about. Like when I ask people like, hey, do you want to see more Slayer stuff, and people are like, yeah, I want to see like social stuff and how to do like a shopping episode, and I'm like, I don't want to do any of that. That's not the stuff that I'm making. Like, what if a different way to use a gun though?
And so like it's the game is designed to do what it is designed to do. And I, again, going back to my origins of playing with improvisers, I kind of have just had to learn that, like, well, you can figure it out. As Chris Bizette says a lot, I trust you. I trust you that you'll be able to do this. So, that would be a weak part, I would say.
Yeah, it's also interesting because you're coming from that inspiration from video games, and it feels very video gamey. Like this is the mechanics of how to do things in the game, and all that social stuff. Well, you're just making that up because there's no dialogue trees,
right? Well, like, and even if you do pick a dialogue tree, like mechanically, like you're not really doing a whole lot with that. Like, yes, your stats maybe kind of affect it, but like we do have dice that we could roll for those things. Like I have a good score in negotiate. So like I can do those things. And not every game is going to do everything.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, a lot of times especially when we have designers on, they're like, well, a flaw of the game is that it doesn't really do this thing. And it's like, well, that's not really a flaw. That's just a thing that this game wasn't built for. And that's okay. You know, that's okay.
Yeah.
That wasn't what you were trying to do.
Right.
That's, you know, so the flaw really is that you as a player picked up this game that doesn't do the thing that you were trying to do. Like the flaw is that you picked the wrong game. So
I do wish in it.
that sounds like a you problem.
Yeah. Maybe you should check yourself. But I know, the more I talk about the setting of Slayers, and I find it interesting and people kind of like buy into it and I think it's very cool. I do wish that, and maybe this is what Slayers 2.0 will eventually be, is that there is more elements that brings in the city and the setting itself into the character creation. Even just simply adding things like, what district are you from? Right? Because that immediately starts to tell us about what are some of the districts that are at play. Or that are maybe not at play because you're banned from that district, and that's why But that helps us start to imagine what the map of our city looks like, and otherwise it's just the GM that's kind of giving you, all right, here's the next block of the city that you're encountering. Even that alone would be a good way to just get people to understand, it's an infinite city. There's an infinite number of possible places that we could come from. Here's where my person is from.
Yeah. Yeah. A little bit of like, okay, what does that, tell me about my player? What does that tell me about like the way my character interacts with Ryan's character? Because we talked about, the possibility of like going into districts and having them be like, sorry, we only do humane catch and release with our monsters here. And if Ryan's character comes from a place like that, and I'm like, oh, I come from a place where we just burn it all to the ground.
Yeah.
Like, what does that do for our interaction with each other too? Like, do you even want to be in a group with me? Like, and now you're experiencing me burning everything to the ground, including you. And you're like, this is why my people hate you. And like, what does that do for our group dynamic too? It could certainly be fun to explore. And, that's what it is. Again, maybe in a 2.0.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
I like what you have here. I do. I do. I think that's just one of those, like, this doesn't do that. It'd be cool if something did at some point.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
It's okay. Yeah. And, have fun doing that at your table if you want.
Exactly.
Right. So what's your favorite part, Spencer?
Two things. One is the speed. It's quick. And I like quick character creation. I like character creation that we get done, in a couple minutes, and then we can start playing right away. That's a big part of playing games to me, is that we're not spending a lot of time in prep. That we're hitting the table, or the dice are hitting the table pretty quickly. The other big part, and this is, kind of like what Ryan is into, is that min-maxing part. There is the part for me that likes to look at the weird combination of advances, not only within my class, but across classes, to think of because inevitably every time I play Slayers, or I talk to people, or I watch people play Slayers, they have found a weird combination of an advance in one class and how it interacts with what another class can do that makes a thing happen that I couldn't anticipate. And that's always the fun part for me, right? Like, that's why Nova is designed about mods, and you're just you're modulating what your character is good at, rather than getting more things. You're modulating how your character does the things that you're already very good at. And so for me, it's thinking about the very weird cross-class things that suddenly go, oh, if I do this and you have this, we have the capacity to do this. And that's the stuff that I really enjoy during character creation. Those light bulb moments where we suddenly go, oh, we're going to be a really cool team because of this.
Yeah. Yeah, I really like, because we've even already had a couple moments of that, of like, you increasing Ryan's abilities to, like explode dice and like continue rolling and doing those combos and things like that. And Ryan being able to sort of like parry and protect me a little bit while I'm doing things. And
right, because in a party of three, like, we only have two people that are really good at doing damage. So like, you two need to stay alive.
Right. And I can see getting really excited as we all kind of advance, being like, okay, if I take this and you take this, with our powers combined, and yeah, that little like again that puzzle thing that just really really tickles my brain of like, oh, like when the things just fit the way that they're supposed. It's so satisfying to my brain. It's so good. It's time for our fanfic. So this is the part where we talked about maybe answering some of those questions. Ryan, I know you kind of started thinking about this already.
I did.
Let's see here. Why did you become a Slayer? Were you trained if you were trained? Where were you trained if you were trained at all? How long have you been doing this? Will it ever end? So Ryan, I want to hear what your thoughts are since you've kind of thought this through.
All right, so Lena Inverse, she's a real Spitfire go-getter type of character. So why did Lena become a Slayer? My answer was to obtain the power to end this curse once and for all.
What curse?
Of the Infinite City.
Ooh.
You're trying to make the Infinite City not be infinite?
Yeah.
Very cool.
Stop bringing all these monsters into this infinite like weirdness. Like, can we break out of this cycle? Is there a spell powerful enough or a technique powerful enough to end it?
And what happens when it stops growing? Do all the monsters stop?
I don't.
Or do we have an ever expanding amount of monsters and now a static size?
Do you see what you've done to us?
Who's
Is
to
that
say?
the right answer?
Who's to say? Well, you don't know.
I guess we got to play
Play
to
to
find
find
out.
out.
Yeah, exactly.
We don't do that here.
No.
Oh no!
It's not. I'm sorry. That's
This is
not
gonna
what
keep
we're
me
about.
up all night.
And then where was I trained? If I was trained at all, I said I had a swordsman friend who passed shortly after training me in the basics, and then I took those basics and honed them into the blade that I am today, because I've been doing this for the better part of a decade.
All right.
So I finally got to this point after 8 to 10 years of effort.
Cool.
Will it ever end? I said everything must end. It's my goal to break this cycle.
Very cool.
Very
good.
So there you go.
Never mind.
You don't know that. You don't know that.
I do know that because I have been like classically trained. Let's say there's some kind of fancy academy in the district that I'm from.
Oh.
And we have been taught that the city needs to continue to expand because the monsters are permanent, and this is sort of a way of the city saving itself, is to continually expand because the monsters will continue to expand no matter what, whether the city expands or not. And so let's say that this is the doing of this school that I am a part of. They're the ones that have made the city continually expand as a method to save us. So really part of my job also is to get you to not complete your mission.
Oh.
Because I know for a fact, whether you want to listen to me or not, that is a bad choice. Because all that will happen is that we will all be swallowed by monsters if you do that.
Every single night ends with us at the pub and my character watching you two fight over a theory.
Right.
Every
and like
single
we're at the
night.
point where I'm like drawing diagrams and doing like complex math problems to like show you the equations. Like if the city continues to expand at this rate and you try to slow it down, but the monsters are exponentially expanding at this rate, then there's actually no room for the people. And we cannot even create enough people to slay all of the monsters at that point because there's not enough space. And so we are now at this point where we and the monsters are consuming too many resources to expand the population, but the monsters are going to continue expanding because they don't need the resources. We need the resources. And if you don't fill this, this void of resources by expanding the city, then...
But can we find a spell big enough to destroy the origin of the monsters? They gotta come from somewhere.
Every single night.
Gotta come from somewhere.
Well, you would need enough. You would need enough people to do the magic, and you can't have enough people to do the magic if the city doesn't continue to expand because you don't have the resources for the people. You're talking yourself in circles.
We'll see what happens. One day we'll get there. One day, I'm sure we will get there. The answer is out there somewhere.
And you're just like, the whole time, I'm just like, no, everything is doomed to be this way forever. And you're like, I'm sure we'll figure it out.
Yep.
I'm like, no, you don't understand.
It is figured out.
People much smarter than you have already solved this problem and you are trying to unsolve it.
Yeah,
And you're like, no, I'm sure this way. We can figure it out.
that's like your opinion, man.
I love this dynamic already of like, it's like very serious. I'm like,
good.
no, we have we've already done it. We've already solved the problem. Please stop trying to unsolve the problem. Just because you don't like the solution doesn't mean you can unsolve it.
Oh, very good.
All right, what about Rasp? We know that
Poor
you were
Rasp.
like scrappy and sort of like not classically trained.
Yeah, so Rasp is on the younger side, and the training that I have is largely through observing slayers that have moved through my district. So I think my district largely had probably a pretty moderate to severe monster problem. So slayers were coming through pretty consistently, and I think for a while that the district had to kind of fend for itself before district slayers started coming in, and so people from the district would fight, and they would fight very dirty, and they would do whatever they had to do to survive against the monsters. And I think that's why Rasp has kind of picked up largely tactics that are involved in fighting dirty rather than fighting effectively against monsters. And so I've mostly just observed my fellow district members fighting monsters. And then when the slayers came in finally, and I saw them fight, I started to realize, okay, if somebody could fight in an orchestrated way like these slayers do, but use the tactics that I have learned, maybe this could be an interesting combination. And I think because Rasp is young, not that kind of veteran that you might expect from a tactician who used to be a slayer for a long time, and now their body can't move the way that they want it to, and so they use their wisdom. Instead, Rasp is quite young and inexperienced, which I think means a lot of slayers are unwilling to work with Rasp in terms of this stuff, which is, I think, why we have such an interesting dynamic where two people who might not typically work with each other because of their vastly different ideologies. Like we're kind of three almost misfits in our way that we think about things or in how we align with each other.
Yeah.
And Rasp is willing to work with anybody. He just wants a chance to get it out there and do this thing. I think is incredibly naive as a result of his inexperience, and just thinks the monster slaying is interesting and fascinating, and so has decided to pair up with anybody. So in terms of like the question of will it ever end, I don't think Rasp wants it to end. Not because he has any belief that the city needs to expand or anything like that, but this is the most exciting thing that has ever happened in his life. He's finally out. He's finally out of his monster-ridden district and is like paired up with two proper slayers and is excited to just go out there and just see what the city has to offer and see how what he has learned works, if it works at all.
Yeah. Oh, I love that.
Which I think is going to get him into like a lot of trouble and like probably mess up a lot of fights. Like I imagine Rasp is going to give a lot of bad advice in early fights and then like start to understand that you can't fight the same way every single time. And so I think a lot of it will be learning how to not always fight dirty and learning like how to support my slayers rather than trying to take down enemies.
Yeah.
So I think that's kind of the trajectory I see Rasp moving in.
Oh, I really like that.
I like that a lot. Oh, it's so good. I also like, no matter how many times we disagree on it, the monsters are still a problem, right?
Right.
So
Yeah, we still
like,
got to go do our job.
so still got to do our job. So like, it's like, yeah, someday maybe we'll figure it out and we don't have to fight any monsters anymore. It'll be fine. And we could just retire and relax. It's okay. But like, we see monsters and we're like, well, time to roll up our sleeves and do the thing and just absolutely wreck the battlefield.
Yeah.
I imagine a lot of the nights again are like you two having your debate at the pub, and then Rasp eventually shows up, puts down like a bag of coins or whatever that I've negotiated for our next job. You're like, all right, well, time to wrap up this conversation. I got our next job for us. We'll settle this after the next one, I'm sure.
See you next time. Sure, it'll be great.
Yeah. Many a bar table filled with scratches of like reasonings and theories and
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like the idea of like this youngest character in our group constantly having to be like, Mom, Dad, stop fighting.
There's a monster under my bed and we need to kill it, Mom and Dad.
Yep.
Stop fighting with each other.
You both make very good points, but it's time to go now.
There's actually a monster in my closet and I need us to go kill it, please.
Yes.
Oh,
Yes.
now I'm picturing a pack of slayers where you are parents fighting monsters in an ever-expanding house to protect your children.
Pretty good.
There you go.
Pretty good.
There you go.
No more games, Ryan. No more games.
I know. It's fine.
No more games.
It's fine. I love this dynamic.
One more.
I love this
Always
dynamic.
one more.
I know, right?
Let me just write this down real quick. I promise I won't do anything with it. I'm just gonna write it. Famous last words. 5 more minutes. Yep. Okay, well, finally, we're going to get into our advancement discussion and take it up a level.
Take it up a level. Take it up a level.
Where Amelia makes the face because she's mad at Ryan about a stupid pun. In this segment, we like to talk about how character advancement works and how character growth happens in the system. So let's start with how characters level up in this game. We know there's basic advancements and then I can't remember what.
Expert advances.
I was like, advanced advances? No, that's not right.
Super advances.
Yeah, you advance and then you like really advance.
True advances.
Yeah. I mean it this time.
The character creation is pretty straightforward. There's no experience that's marked or anything like that marks a level up or anything like that. Instead, at the end of every hunt, which is the mission that you go on to take out a monster in whatever district, at the end of that hunt, you all advance, regardless of the success of the hunt, because you learn from your failures, just like you learn from your successes. And so your characters will become more effective regardless of if you did a good job or a bad job. When you advance, there are some reflection questions that you are invited to answer to learn a little bit more about yourselves, learn about your connection to your fellow slayers. So you ask yourselves, like, what did you learn about yourself as a result of this hunt? You might have realized that you see or do things differently. Or what did you learn about an ally during the hunt? Would you have done anything differently? So having approached the hunt one way, maybe you now realize approaching it another way is going to be helpful for you in the future. And then what is something about this hunt that will stick with you for quite some time? You know, we don't want the monster hunting to feel like monotony where it is just another job, right? We want there to be that element of something about each hunt is going to scar you either physically or mentally. You are going to remember something about this. It will change who you are. So you're invited to answer one of those questions, and then mechanically you do just 3 things. One is you roll a D4 and you increase your maximum HP that way. So there's some variability in terms of how much you increase. This is why Ryan has chosen Hardy, for example, so that every time you level up, you don't even have to roll that D4. You're always getting the 4 every single time. But for some of us, sometimes a level up is going to get us a good boost of health, and other times we're just going up 1, and that's just the way that it is. Yeah. Our skills get better as well. The way that skill increases work is first you pick any skill that you have a D6 in, so something that you're only average in, and you upgrade it to a D8. If eventually you've played long enough that all of your things are at least a D8, then you do the same thing, but going from a D8 to a D10. So, I mean, you can imagine a scenario where you play long enough where everything goes from a D6 to a D8 to a D10. It'd be a long campaign, but it is technically possible. And so that shows that you're getting better with your skills. And then you get to choose an advance. Basic advances, the ones that we took during character creation, you can take those at any time. So you can continue to take more of those regardless of the kind of quote unquote level you are. The expert advances, you can only start taking expert advances once you have at least 5 basic advances marked. So you can't start taking those, because those are as we kind of saw during our character creation, those are kind of the game changers where you start to really ramp up what your character is capable of.
Yeah.
And so you have to go do a couple of hunts before you're considered an expert in this. And so, but you don't have to do a lot of hunts, right? Because this is a problem that, like, D&D has level 20, but the amount of time you have to take to get to level 20 is way too long, right? So just a few hunts. Really, it's only after 3 hunts, because we start with 2 basic advances. So you're going to mark 3 more after 3 hunts, and now it's game for you to be able to start taking those expert advances. So after your 3rd hunt, you get to start seeing your character really do their thing especially well. And that's advancement. You do that every time at the end of a hunt.
I really like answering those questions. As our listeners will know, my least favorite thing is when you get an advancement and it has nothing to do with what narratively happened in the game. My core example is we just went dungeon diving and now I have the sailing skill, and it bothers my brain. So I like having these questions to answer, to be like, okay, what happened? What changed? How does this affect me? And then what does that mean for my character now?
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And it has those narrative like consequences kind of built right into it as well.
Right.
Of like, yeah, I have to answer one of these questions. Once I do, then I get those extra mechanical bonuses, which is really cool.
Yeah, exactly.
I like it.
I love it.
Plus, it's simple.
It is. Yes.
That's the name of my games.
I know.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yep. No, going back to check what percentage I can increase the skill to based on where I got it from in character creation. Ryan, looking at you. Looking at you.
I know. I know.
Can't wait to cover Kerps. Very excited.
I know. I'm very excited. Well, Spencer, anything else you want to tell us about Slayers before we head out for this episode?
Nothing really jumps at the top of my mind other than, if this sounds cool and the things that we kind of touched on sound cool, there's so much more Slayers out there, like both a quote unquote official and third party, that the game is infinitely expanding, and you have the capacity to kind of find the ways for you to engage with it in whatever way you want, right? The Slayer's Almanac, for example, has nothing mechanical in it. So you could technically pick that up for any campaign you're running if you just want some cool city districts. But if you want to, if you're not sure how to populate your infinite city, there's 10 really cool districts right there that you can pick up. Or if you want to deep dive into one district, the Dust supplement says, all right, here's everything you need to know about this place. It is factions, it's adventure hooks, it's a new class, it's new monsters. And then, like I said, there's so many third-party things out there for whatever thing is going to like scratch that itch in your mind of this is what fun is to me. Someone has probably found a way to translate it to Slayers, or you could do it yourself. And I think it's in an approachable enough way that I think most folks can find a way to like dip their toes into design with something like Slayers. So yeah, I'm just really proud of it. And I'm excited that people still get excited about it after, it's been out for a little while, and there's still people who are discovering it. And I just appreciate when people are like, hey, I played this game and it was really cool. So yeah, I thank you for letting me be here and talk about how character creation is cool.
I'm so excited that we got to talk about this game, because it really is. It tickles my brain. I like it.
Absolutely.
I like it because I wanted to, darn it.
Exactly. Well, Spencer, thank you so much for joining us to talk about Slayers. I really, really enjoyed learning about this game.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate the time to be able to talk about it, and I'm in love with these characters we've made. What a fun little group we have here. I want to watch them argue every single night.
Fun little antagonistic found family.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, can you remind everyone where they can find you online and what sort of things you're working on?
Absolutely. So you can follow me online everywhere under Gila RPGs, GILA RPGs. That's Twitter. GilaRPGs.com is my website. That has links to my itch page where you can get PDFs and digital versions. It has links to my store where you can get the physical printed copies of my games. So yeah, if you search Gila RPGs anywhere, that's pretty much where you'll find me on the internet. And then the things that I'm working on are numerous. I am currently working on a rune hack that is a necromancy themed hack. So you are a powerful necromancer roaming around doing cool necromancer stuff. I've got about 5 different Nova supplements that I'm actively working on right now. And Nova never stops. So I've been sharing some cool art on Twitter. So if you want to see some of the cool stuff that's being been going on, including a game called Dusk, where you get to play as the enemy factions in Nova. You get to be one of the Corvus or the Hellions or the Cultists. And speaking of weird found families, you have banded together and are trying to survive in the Dusk, which is a horrible place to live, especially with those sparks out there trying to kill you. So that is another one that I'm working on. And there's probably other things. And I've got a document that tries to keep me on track, and it doesn't work. So there's always something out there.
Find Spencer. He's doing stuff.
Yeah, and then also lamenting that he's doing stuff.
Right.
Where he goes, I can't
do other stuff.
There's too much stuff.
I can only do one stuff at a time. That's not fair.
It's not fair. I need more Spencers.
Right? Yep. Well, thank you again so much for sitting down with us. This was absolutely a blast. And thank you to everyone for tuning in. We'll be back next month.
Call to action.
Yeah, like that. I'm excited that people finally get to hear the fan fiction portion for this one, because when we get to this section of our call to action, every time I'm like, don't say anything about it yet, because I haven't heard that part. So now people finally get to hear about the potential mystery that's unfolding that we'll never have answers to.
And our friendly academic rivalry.
Yes. And poor Rasp, who has to just continually break up the mom, dad, stop fighting. Yep.
Got the high-strung academic type versus the dude, apparently, versus just Rasp, just sitting there in the corner like, I'm in danger.
I'm in danger. Yeah. I definitely love this group of characters. And I really
it's so much fun.
Have said it a bajillion times, but the asymmetrical character mechanics, just chef's kiss.
So good. Yeah, absolutely check this game out. My goodness. It is good stuff.
It really, really is.
But we have a lot to talk about in this call to action.
Okay, enough about the stuff that this podcast was about. Enough about games.
Yeah.
Dear listeners, this is our last regularly scheduled episode for March. We have a few more things planned for the Patreon. But that's not what we're here to talk about today. Right now, we want to talk about our upcoming 5-year anniversary of this podcast. Sunday, April 2nd, will mark 5 years that we've been doing this show. And what a 5 years it's been.
What a journey.
What a journey. Ryan, lots happened. You had another kid. I was married at the start, and now I am not. Just a lot happening.
Lots happening.
In celebration, we are going to be doing a bit extra during this next 2 months, and we can't wait to reveal what we have planned.
So we're going to do that right now. We're going to reveal it right now. So
right now?
We can't wait. So we're going to be doing that. Yeah.
Right now? This minute?
Right now.
Okay.
This very minute.
Okay.
So over the past couple months, Amelia and I have been planning a Patreon drive together for the months of April and May to mark this momentous occasion. You can head over to patreon.com/charactercreationcast and sign up at any time at this point. But to start things off, we are setting 2 goals for ourselves. If we hit the $100 per month in pledges goal, we will offer everyone at the $5 and higher tiers a set of 3 custom D6 dice from ChessX in our signature colors. This goes for all existing patrons at that level as well. And dare I say, the renders that we got back are phenomenal.
I'm excited. I'm excited.
Really excited for that.
At the $200 a month mark, we are able to start offering an option for people to back annually at a discounted rate. So it'll be a good deal, but we can only do that once we have $200 a month. If we get there by the end of May, then we will also offer everyone at the $5 and up level a free enamel pin.
Ooh.
I am working on a design that blends our magical girl and necromancer aesthetics along with our signature C3 branding. It's going to be fantastic once it all comes together. And we'll have more info on that as we get closer to that $200 goal.
And going forward after the campaign, all new $5 and higher signups will get one set of the dice as long as we have an address to send it to. This is in addition to the custom thank you card from Amelia and myself. Amelia, of course, creates the cards and she does a fantastic job. That's worth it in and of itself. But now you get dice too.
Yeah.
But this Patreon drive is the only time you'll be able to get the pin also at the $5 level if we hit that $200 mark.
If you sign up at the $10 and higher level, that tier also comes along with the dice and the thank you cards, as well as Zoom sessions with the two of us and other patrons at that level. Those have been a ton of fun and much cheaper than therapy, although, disclaimer, we are not therapists.
No.
No one on that call is a therapist. We cannot guarantee it will help as much as therapy, but it has been changing some lives already. We've got a little accountability group, and we're all working together on some stuff. It's been really great.
That's accountability with 3 C's.
Yes. No. But I think it's well worth the $10 a month. So
I think so too.
Yeah.
We will have all of this and so much more happening these 2 months. We'll also be making a couple Patreon exclusive episodes available to the public with some quick cold opens and calls to actions added on to those episodes to update where we are on the campaign, to really give us that telethon feel. I kind of want that sort of like, hey,
NPR pledge drive kind of feel.
Yes. Here's where we're at, people. Call now and reserve your spot in the Patreon.
Yep.
Or something like that.
Yep.
It should be a lot of fun. And we can't wait to launch all of that for you. And just a reminder, if you sign up the day this episode releases at the $5 and up level, you will be eligible for all these rewards if we hit those levels.
So think about helping us out. We want to give you some really cool stuff, and we think that you'll really enjoy. Again, all of this will be in our newsletter because we've talked a lot and thrown a lot of numbers around. But if we add more people, we'll also be able to thank all of them personally right here, right now, like we are going to do, starting with Lieutenant. Thank you.
DJG, Tigranosaurus, you rock. Thank you.
We are so glad to have your support, Eric Bonds. Thank you so much.
Shadim Kabal, we are happy to have you here with us as well. Thank you.
Many thanks to Daryl Holiday II.
Thanks to the Shyest Barbarian. So glad to have you backing us.
Benjamin Sweeney, thanks.
Lorcan McGinnis, we're happy to have you here with us. Thank you.
Rob Fletcher, we are so happy you are here too. Thank you.
Kevin Brown, many thanks to you.
Tentacle Dog, thank you.
And thanks to John Adamus. So glad to have you here with us.
We appreciate your support. A3 Sketchpad, thank you.
Thank you to Cole McCallum.
And Carlos Salazar. We are really happy to have you with us. Thank you.
And thank you to all of our future patrons and to those joining us during the Patreon drive and to everyone else celebrating these last 5 years with us. Check out patreon.com/charactercreationcast in order to join this list of fantastic folks and to help us usher in a new year for the podcast itself. And if all of this went over your heads, you can find more about it in our monthly newsletter at newsletter.charactercreationcast.com.
In addition to all of that excitement, we also have a brand new review. This one came in from Mint and Rabbits from Canada on iTunes, and it's titled A Treasure Trove. I love listening to this podcast. It's not only a great introduction to new games, but the hosts and their guests take some time to talk about how the characters act as a window into how the game works. In a world where there's never enough time to play all of the games, Character Creation Cast surely helps at least touch on a lot of them.
Thank you so much for that. Love the username as well.
That's a very good username.
It made me smile reading Mint and Rabbits.
Yeah.
So, thank you so much. Really happy to get that review, and that really, really made my day when I saw that earlier.
It does. We love new reviews.
Absolutely. Again, thank you all so much for joining us and listening to this extra long call to action. We promise these won't be as long during the Patreon drive. We'll try to contain ourselves. But until then, take care of yourselves. Stay safe out there. Drink some water. Take some calming breaths. Enjoy the rest of your week and keep making those amazing people. We'll see you next time.
Character Creation Cast is a production of the One Shot Podcast Network and can be found online at www.charactercreationcast.com. Head to the website to get more information on our hosts, this show, and even our press kit. Character Creation Cast can be found on Twitter at CreationCast or on our Discord server at discord.charactercreationcast.com. I'm one of your hosts, Amelia Antrim, and I can be found on Twitter at Ginger Reckoning, or on my other podcast, Garbage of the Five Rings. Our other host, Ryan Bolter, can be found on Twitter at Lord Neptune or online at lordneptune.com. Music for this episode is used with a Creative Commons license or with permission from the podcast it originated from. Further information can be found within the show notes. Our main theme music is Hero Remix by Steve Combs and is used with a Creative Commons license. This podcast is owned by us under Creative Commons. This episode was edited by the absolutely fantastic Ryan Bolter. Further information for the game system used in today's guests can also be found in the show notes. If you'd like to support our show, find us on Patreon. Get access to bonus episodes, extra outtakes, and much, much more at patreon.com/charactercreationcast. Thanks for joining us. And remember, we find the best part of any role-playing game is character creation. So go out there and create some amazing people. We'll see you next time. I nailed it.
Yeah.
Wow, that was perfect.
There we go. I like hearing that everybody did the record button perfectly.
I just hit it right now. I just lied to make it seem like I did it right.
Oh, no. Well, hey, you saying that, I can line that up perfectly now.
No, I'm kidding though. But now
it's too late. You already said it.
No, I will never know which one's the right one.
One of us lies. One of us always lies, and one of us always tells the truth.
Oh no.
Oh no. One of us has real waveforms. One of us just pretended to click the button.
Someone made a click sound with their mouth.
Oh no.
You got yours all settled away? You know what you're going for?
I mean, I know what I want. I know what I'm about.
Fair.
No, like I said, when I first read it 2 years ago, apparently I highlighted one in green. I was
This
like,
is
this is it. This is what we're doing. So, to stay true to myself. How is this coffee cold already?
Did you just
'Cause I put
rewarm
cream
it?
in I just made it, Ryan. I just poured it from the pot.
Oh.
Okay, I'm gonna go put my creamer away, and then I'm gonna warm this up for like 30 seconds, and then we can start. I'm sorry,
Okay.
I can't drink
All right.
cold coffee.
That's fine. All right. We can stop
Nailed
this recording here and save it off. Here we go.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I got
Real good.
professional. Did
It's
it.
there. No more fake clickies this time.
This time.
I don't know. I didn't check the last one, so.
When I'm coming back for my shirt, it's going to be the worst click experience of your life. It's going to be chaos.
The 6th series is just going to be like pure pandemonium.
Mm-hmm. Since we'll be over there like eating on mic and like
try to stop me.
Dog like barking in the background.
Just taking a big chunk of cheese out of the block.
Yeah.
Sharp cheddar. If I combine it with this mild cheddar at the same time and some crackers.
Get a little crunch in there.
Yeah, you got to get the crunch.
Perfect audio.
Yep.
All right. I will count us in and then we will start part 2.
All right.
Woo!
Gotta find that stop button.
There we go.